sheesh. But oh well. Hey Mick, so what did you find is different from when you left the job and when you came back? Was it quite like daunting at first with all the new training?
Yep, definitely. The first 12 months, because it's like I'd come from pressure gauges and all the dash instrumentation, that was just totally different. When I come back to and even with GWA, it was all computerised. Or the GWA, they were all right, I suppose, because they still had a lot of the old locos. But when I went over to Pacific National, and going on to NRs, everything was computerised. So you had digital screens and things. And I reckon it took me 12 months to get my head around that, as opposed to looking at pressure gauges. And I must say, and Paul, because at the time Paul was doing interviews then, because you were the depot manager then, Paul?
When was that, Nick?
2000. When I joined, it would have been 2002, I think. I went with Pacific National.
In Pacific National, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. But in any case, one of the things that Paul said to me, and because we're old school, he said the system's changed, the regulations are more tighter. It's a private company as opposed to when we worked with SAR, which was a government company. But back in the 70s and 80s, your railway mates were really tight knit, but when I came over in the 2000s, it was you had to cross your T's, dot your I's.
It went from an organisation, Andy, where it was government owned, making no money, and it was funded by public funds, of course, to a privately run business where drivers were, rather than being told what to do by the running shift foreman or whoever, or the guard, or whoever it might have been, or the shunter.
Leslie's sticking the face down and saying hello, Paul. Sorry to cut in.
Hello, Leslie.
Yeah.
Drivers another.
Oh my God. That is great.
That's okay. So it went from that organisation to a privately run organisation where drivers had a lot more autonomy. They could talk with the customers. Obviously the business wanted to make money. They weren't losing money. So it's totally a paradigm shift from what it was, back when we started with government-owned railways, and it's no different today.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I guess the dynamic, what Mick was talking about, the comradeship is still there, but it's a different way. It's a different era of comradeship. It's probably still there, but not quite like it was relaxed back when we were in the job, And I don't mean relaxed where people were doing wrong things with safe working. It's not that. I don't want people thinking, drivers were doing what. No, we all still had our respect for the job, but it's a little bit different as to what you said, Paul, nowadays, way more professional. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And people like us might have struggled back in the day to get a job in the railways today.
Oh gosh, I would have.
Yeah, me too. I think me too. I did year 11 at school. I mean, now if you haven't got year 12 and you haven't got another skill, you might have a trade or you worked in another industry. You've got no hope.
Yeah,
I knew you were smarter than me, Paul. I only did year 10. Third year.
I don't think I even made it that far. That's why I became an actor. That was the only hope.
Exactly.
But I think you're right. It's like I think you're right. It is different. But having said that, even those like guys who got in without much educational training, still a lot made amazing train drivers. No
doubt,
high percentage. But it's just the way the world is now. Like you've got to have all that training behind you in a lot of jobs. Even McDonald's, they want to make sure that you've got something behind you. Bit of intelligence. Hey, before we finish, can I ask both of you, like Paul, since we're talking to you, can you give us just one humorous story that you may remember?
Oh God,
there's one of many thousands.
I knew you were going to ask me this. There's lots and lots of them, but 99% of them I couldn't possibly repeat. But I can tell you one. Right. I can tell you one story that's a bit humorous. Back in the day, everyone had a nickname. even buildings. I know you referred to the crib room or whatever. I can't remember how you referred to it earlier on, Andy, but back in the day, they used to call that the Goofy House.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
ask
right.
me where these names came from, but so every driver had a nickname. So my driver that I worked with for a long time, Jim, who both of you know, he and I were on a pilot shift one evening, and another crew was there as well, not the same time. A pilot shift was, for those who don't know, you'd have a crew available if someone booked off sick or, something went bump in the night, then there was a crew available to go and do whatever the job was. So, but you'd sit around and play cards if nothing was happening. And that's what was happening this particular night. And the other driver and his mate, and let's call this other driver Lollycake, for the want of a better term. So I think he's still alive, so I'll just have to be a bit careful. So let's call him Lollycake because we'll give him a name. He was there with his fireman, and of course we're paying cards. And out of the blue, he happens to tell my mate Jim that earlier that day he'd gone to the doctor's because he'd, in his words, got a dose of the crabs. True story.
That is great.
So my driver was absolutely mortified. Like, he used to dress impeccably, had the shiny shoes. He used to even polish his kit bag. He was absolutely mortified. He couldn't get out of the Goofy House quick enough. Lo and behold, 2 days later, our job was to relieve the Penrice train. I don't know whether you remember the Penrice train. Used to So they'd go with the empties in the night time, come back in the early hours of the morning, and we'd relieve them at the Mile End Goods, which was near the cemetery there. So our job was to relieve this train. Guess who was on it? Lollycake and his mate. So Lollycake, who had the crabs, he was working this train. And my driver, Jim, he was beside himself for 48 hours. Saying, we've got to relieve this guy, So he said, right, we'll bring all the antiseptic, we'll bring the spray and wipe, we'll bring the antiseptic in, we'll wipe everything down. We're not going to get into that cab until he gets out. And he was just over the top with it. When we get, the train pulls up, we're on the wooden steps there. The driver hops out, Lollycake hops out and his mate. My driver goes in, totally ignoring him, and starts spraying all the stuff around, wiping all the stuff. He's got stuff going all over the place. It's like mist in the cab, trying to get rid of what he thinks are these crabs that are going to get him, because this driver's got them. The other driver, he got out onto the wooden step, and his head was level with the 930 class window. So he slides that open, and he's leaning. He's leaning on this, telling my mate, the train's a good thing, one thing and another. My driver's completely ignoring him, spraying this stuff everywhere to get and he was oblivious. He said, right, blew the whistle, off we went. And he was standing on the platform, still talking, I'm sure of it.
Oh, that's hilarious, mate.
Oh,
and that's one of the ones.
Anyhow,
that's one of the ones you can tell.
That is the only one. I've been thinking about this for a week. It is the only one I can tell without incriminating myself or many others.
It's crazy, mate.
But fortunately,
Mick,
it's moved on to a different time now. And we have things like this.
Yeah. What is that? Oh.
So things like that weren't heard of, back in the day.
Well, you know what? The funny thing is, when you said that about cleaning, I went, oh, actually, it's probably no different than what we're doing now. Like rubbing everything down, cleaning things, wiping things down. So, and not for that reason, but it is a little bug, a little virus.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have any idea.
never had crabs.
I've never had them. No.
Well, COVID's keeping things clean.
That's right.
Mick,
that's right.
Do you have a humorous story that will not get you into trouble?
Yeah, well, that's difficult. Yeah. Well, I obviously there's one at Callington, but apparently I can't tell that.
No, I've got another one for you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, go on.
Mick, you can tell the story, and it's not quite humorous. Well, on reflection, it's humorous, but when you got stuck in the sleep seal tunnel with Jimmy.
Oh yeah, well, there. And what?
It's not all that funny, but it's sort of.
With Johnny Wheatsra.
No, when Jimmy Martin came out through the engine room door, remember?
Um,
And they had to bring a train down from Blackwood down the up line to rescue
yeah,
you.
because
And the smoke was coming in.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You remember?
Oh, I do. I'm just trying to think.
I don't want to tell your story.
Yeah. No. That's it. I'm just trying to go back because where I got stuck was actually at. I didn't get stuck on the train, but and it has to do with actually going off a loco and on a loco. But at the same time, it was at Balliarda. It's just a little siding. It's not really short. In any case, we're on a 700 close. Jimmy Martin and myself coming back from, and I can say Jim because he's dead and gone. We're coming back from Tarlin Bend. In any case, I want to cook my breakfast, bacon and eggs on my hot plate. But we were driving in the B end, and of course the hot plate was down the A end, so it's the other end. So I go to the engine room door, tell Jim to throttle off as I go through, just to cut the engine noise down, and the door is jammed. So it ended up that the door jammed up. So what I had to do, I didn't have to, but I wanted breakfast, is I actually climbed down the ladder at Balliarda, slid off onto the ballast, grabbed hold of the loco steps at the other end on the A end, climbed back up again, walked through the engine room, got me bacon and eggs, went, still raw, took them back down to the hot plate, cooked them, and then I turned around. Then as I'm walking back through the engine room to come back to Jim and have my breakfast, the generator fan blows my bacon off the plate, so I came back with one egg on a piece of toast. And Jim says, "What are you that hungry? You ate it?" And of course, I told him because I was furious. And in any case, I said to him about things, and I don't know whether you know, like from in the steam days. I said, "How did he used to get on with cooking stuff in the steam days?" And in any case, he said, "Oh, we used to cook steaks and things on the shovel and stick them into the firebox and bloody cook them." Oh, rightio, it sounds good. And then another conversation come up about, because on the 900 class, I think you had the toilet in the engine room. You remember that? Right down the back, they used to have the toilet
yeah.
So again, if you had to go and use the toilet, you had to try and throttle off and keep the noise down a bit and come back again, or pick your spots where you're going to be. Jimmy says, "Oh, they used to do it on the shovel, like not having a whiz, but having a crap, having it on the shovel." I said, "But you just ate off of that." And he said, "No, it's all right." He said, you burn it off afterwards before you put your steak back on it." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me." So, yeah.
I reckon he's having a lendia.
No, I actually heard it before from a couple of other steam guys too.
Oh, yeah. Man.
Yeah, because
glad I wasn't in those days, mate. When your driver goes, "Hey, mate, I've cooked some steak. You want it?" You go, "Nah, she's right, mate.
Yeah,
I've got my own.
Exactly.
I got sandwiches."
Yeah, no breakfast for me, but I am busting for a crap.
Yeah.
So when you finish with the shovel.
Exactly. Yeah. Swampy
that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Swampy Marsh wrote a book, all to do with steam days back in the 40s, and in case I think that story is in it. One of them, which again Jim told me, but he told a story which I reckon is hilarious with this steam freight train, but it's all steam, and they had a passenger coming up behind them, but they reckon they could keep ahead of the passenger train. All right, and the guard is on every station they go to, they're getting the right of way to keep movement ahead of the passenger train, so they don't hold up the passenger train, and they're heading down to Esperance. And in any case, the guard, when they get there ahead of time and just beat the passenger train in, the guard said, if this was a train full of pregnant women, they all would have been girls. They would have had girls, because he said it.
My God. Only Aussie humour. Only Aussie humour, mate. Yeah, only. Exactly. Hey, listen, guys. That's. Thanks for finishing on that note, Mick.
Or not?
Oh, that's so funny. So funny. But look, well, look, this has been awesome. Like Doug's going to split this into 2 episodes, but yeah, really funny story. And there is some books out there with drivers who've written, things from their job and there are some hilarious stories. And I'm sure there's a lot that you can't tell. And before we finish, I'll share one with you. When I was a trainee engineman in Dyne, and I was on the shunt engines. I wasn't qualified for the main line yet. And I had one of the A-class drivers, the Southern Aurora, Spirit of Progress, the big wheelers, they used to call them, and running all the fast trains. And he was immaculate, just like Jimmy. Polished shoes, overalls, bib and brace, clean as, mate. And we were on the shunt yard next to the Dyne locomotive depot. And the shift came to an end. We're on the Y-class, and at the end of the shift, the trainee engine got to sweep the floor. And I was brand new, mate. I'd probably only done 7 or 8 hours. So I swept the floor, handed him the shovel, and he goes, "What's this?" I said, "You got to do your side, don't you?" That was it. Never saw him again. He just looked at me. I won't say what he said. He just looked at me and went, "Okay." And he got off the engine and never spoke to me again. In the next 10 months, I was in the job there. Like I said to someone, "What did I do?" He goes, "You asked him to sweep the floor." He goes, "Mate, it's like he didn't throw you off the engine." I went, "Oh, okay." Probably would have had to bop him one if he did. I learnt really quickly the hierarchy of the cannonballers and the big wheelers. But look, guys, thanks. Oh yeah, there wouldn't be any of that anymore. I don't think. Is there? It's just everyone's equal. Which is
so
good.
They're both
anyway.
drivers on the locomotive, Andy. There's no such thing as a fireman. They're both qualified drivers. They share the driving. All this driver-only operations. So there's none of that. No.
And I think it's good. I think it's good that way. It just keeps everyone equal, and
as we should be. None
of the pecking order. But look, guys, thanks, Doug. Sorry, mate, you got a bit left out, but you can't help when you get these railway boys together.
No problem. I always enjoy just watching the show sometimes.
Well, Dougie, and thanks, Mick, and thanks, Paul. Really appreciate your time, guys. It was really cool catching up from over the other side of the world. Which technology is amazing, isn't it? We'd never done this years ago.
No, that's for sure.
No worries. Thanks for the invite, Doug and Andy. Much appreciated. We've had some fun.
Yeah, no, it was good, mate. I appreciate it. Well, Dougie, you can sign us out, mate.
All righty, everyone. I want to thank Andy, Paul, and Mick for appearing on the show. And we'll see you next week for the next interview of Tales from the Rails.
Very good.
Awesome.